listen, you look at it and you go, how amazing some of this is in its day. But what's so amazing is that's all that's left. Think of the legacy that was left. Listen, we see turmoil, we see dysfunction, we see all, I'm not trying to throw a rock or anything at Elvis, the king of rock. Get that? Anyway, but what about our legacies? What story will be told about our lives when we've gone? Will it be something that God would be proud of? If the answer is no, you are still alive, you're still breathing, and you can change that future. However, you must make the choice to change the outcome, which will mean making decisions to live totally dedicated to God. And so, what's left? Like I said, I got just the tail end of yesterday. I was encouraged and challenged and inspired, and as I would sit down and begin to do all the pieces for today, thinking back on that, I had three thoughts that I want to take. But as I get to those three thoughts, I want to build off of this. We make this declaration. We make this declaration over us. I make this declaration over us, because you may go, well, I never do that. Listen, I'm encouraging you begin to make this declaration over yourself, but over us as the Destiny Center, that we're a New Testament church impacting our community. Why do I do that, Pastor Scott? Because we are making a declaration of what God's placed on the inside of us to become. All right, I'll change it again. I'll say it again. Listen, the reason we make that declaration is because God has put something on the inside of us that we desire to see come to fruition, to come to life, to begin to be what we are saying we are. There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than dying with potential. There's nothing worse than, oh, they had so much potential, but, right? And so listen, I'm telling you, the potential is this. We have the potential to make an impact, but let us not leave something and say, man, I wish they would have done more. Don't be on our deathbed and say, man, I wished I would have done more. I wish I'd have spent more time here. I wish I would have spent more time there. And listen, we all have that, right? Aren't there are things that we wish, I wish I could have done that over. I wish I'd have been more intentional in this moment. I wish I'd have made this decision at this moment. I was thinking of just this week, I'm not going to go into it because I'll be real honest with you. As I rethought this whole thought process, I was embarrassed. I had to repent to God. And listen, it wasn't anything that I did to God. It was something I did to my own family. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I am an idiot. No amens. No, I'm like, man, that was a dumb decision that I made. In my own insecurity, in my own ignorance, and some of those things. And listen, we see those things. I thank God that it wasn't eternal and it wasn't fatal. It was just a dumb decision that I made, and I'm reflecting on it 20-something years later, and I'm like, man, that was crazy. Why did I do that? But you want to know something? That moment doesn't define who I am, and that moment doesn't define who I'm going to be. It defines a stupid decision at a moment. And so listen, we all face things, right? I wish this would have changed. But listen, I don't want to live a life of regrets when I get to the end of it. And Jesus would look at me, as the Scripture says in Matthew 25, he said, or in Matthew 7, he says, he looks at him and he says, "Depart from me, for I never knew you." But Lord, didn't we do all of these things? We prophesied in your name, and we cast out demons in your name, and we did all these church things in your name. And he's going to say, "Depart from me, for I never knew you." That to me, that's kind of scary. Not because I'm afraid of it. I'm just saying, what I'm saying is the reason it's scary is because, you know something? When he said that, he was talking about those people that would stand before him. He wasn't just telling some story. He was saying these things are going to happen. And so we're a New Testament church impacting our community. Listen, I don't want to just have a nice building. The world can do that. Hey, look back there and look across the street. The world can build nice buildings. I don't want just a nice building. Say, oh, that's my legacy. Let it burn. And I'll be careful. But you know what I'm saying? Listen, if that's what my legacy is, if it's just brick and mortar and stone and steel and all that stuff, then what is it? Because those things will fade away, they'll burn down, they'll change. You know something, the style of it will change in 2 years. Oh, we should have done this differently, and we should have done that differently because the styles will have changed. Guess what? Anyway, it ain't. But we don't want just a nice building, but we do want to make an impact multi-generationally and multi-ethnically in multi-ways. Listen, why do we want to impact our community? Because God has placed something in us, a legacy to leave. What's left? What's left? Of course, I have the awesome privilege of being 51 years old. And hey, listen, the Lord's blessed me. He's helped me. All those things. But listen, when you start getting older, when you're young, you don't think about some of these things. But when you start getting older, you start thinking about not legacy. What am I going to leave my kids? Right? We do that to some extent. But the point is you begin to think, how does this translate? How does this transition? How does this change? What is my place for some of those transitions? Right? But we want to be multi-generational and multi-ethnical and multi-godly. My word. A New Testament church impacting our community. And for us to make an impact, let us leave a spiritual legacy. A spiritual legacy. Listen, I was thinking about this thought this morning. It's the old thought. He who dies with the most toys wins. And I've thought about that, and I've added a little bit to it because I think it's more appropriate. He who dies with the most toys still dies. And he ain't taking nothing with him, or she ain't taking nothing. It's just, hey, it's gone. And if we leave toys, are we just going to leave toys? Or are we going to leave something? But Paul says, I desire to come to you. I desire to visit you. I desire to come and be a part of your life. And I desire to come because I desire to impart. I desire to leave. I desire to give. I desire to impart some spiritual gift. And so three points, and we'll walk through this if I can quickly. The first one is this: you can't leave what you don't receive. You can't leave what you don't receive. Hey, when we start talking about, well, I want my kids to have a spiritual heritage, and God does some awesome things, and He's able to do however He wants to do it. Listen, I've seen some kids in my own, not in my personal family, but I've seen some kids in our ministry that their home life was jacked up. And yet, man, they served God. Shanna Rice, one of our spiritual daughters, one of our spiritual trophies. Man, and when I say that, I'm not trying to be mean toward her family or any of those things. I'm just saying, hey, listen, it was dysfunctional, and yet she served God. She loves God with all of her heart. And so God can do those things because he can do what He wants to do. But I'm just telling you, you can't leave what you don't receive. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 11 to the church at Corinth, and he's writing to the church at Corinth that's a little jacked up. I'm sorry, that's probably not even Christian to say, is it? Will y'all get over it? Lord, forgive me. He said I could say it. Okay. And so you're a little messed up, right? My granny, she's turning. I can't believe my grandson with her Kleenex. I can't believe my grandson. Anyway, I'm sorry. Please help me, Jesus. But Paul writes this. Man, that coffee this morning. Melinda, what did you put in that coffee this morning? It was good. Get you some. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 11, he says, "For I received from the Lord that which I also delivered to you." Listen, if we want to pass on a spiritual heritage, we better receive a spiritual heritage. I thank God for the spiritual heritage I have. I'm not walking around and want to be arrogant about it. Listen, I am nobody. I just thank God that somebody died for me. And so, listen, I think, but I want to pass that on. If you go in my office, I have a Bible that's in there. It's not, well, it's mine now. It was not mine. It was my great-granddad's. I never really knew my great-granddad. I was born when my mom takes me, so to speak, to meet him as a baby. He can't believe it's her son. This isn't your baby. You're two, whatever it is. And so I didn't know him, but I have a Bible in there. Listen, that Bible really has no value unless what's on the inside of that Bible does something on the inside of me. It's a heritage. I'm appreciative of that. But you cannot leave what you don't receive. Hey, listen to this. You can't receive what you don't embrace. This is not the next point. This is a sub-point of that. Well, I want the blessings of God. Well, then you need to embrace His Word, because His Word will direct you and show you the blessings that He has available to you. Well, I want it like this. Listen, hey, if you want it your way, you can go to Burger King. But if you're going to do it His way, you need to go to the King. You got to say, Lord, I've messed this up. I've done all these things, and this is what it's turned out to be. I'm going to give it to you. I want to do it your way. And listen, if you can't receive what you won't embrace. We do this because we want to be nice, because we've been taught good manners. Somebody gives you something. Oh, you shouldn't have done that. Oh, and what we're actually doing is we're being a little prideful. Oh, don't give that to me. You shouldn't have. Well, I wanted to be a blessing to you. And you can't receive this unless you embrace it. You know, there are spiritual things you go, well, I'm not crazy. I don't like this part. I'm not saying you have to like all the parts, but will you embrace all that He has? Yes. Maybe you don't understand all the things, and maybe it's a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge. Those things that you can fix. But you can't receive what you don't embrace. See, that's why it's important. That's why it was important for the ladies to be at Women's Retreat. Not just because it was another thing, because we need those spiritual opportunities to embrace what the Lord is doing. Well, I don't like this, I don't like that, and hey, that you deal with that. You miss those 30 hours that were impactful. But the point is this: it's important. That's why it's important for our kids to go to camp. Well, it's too expensive. Well, you can pay $280 for them to go to camp, or you can pay $200 an hour for going to see a counselor. What's more expensive now? Now, listen, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm being a little harsh on that. Listen, we need Christian counselors. We need people that will help us. And sometimes we need those things. So I'm not downplaying that or speaking down to them. I'm just saying, listen, we can't receive what we don't embrace. And that's why it's important for us to come together, because it's in those moments that there's a spiritual impact. This morning we spent more time in worship. We go, why do we do that? Because listen, there were some people that were needing a release. And there were some people that needed to embrace. So, well, I don't, it's just too long. The Cowboys are on at noon. Well, Jesus, I rebuke them Redskins. No. May their tacklers not be able to tackle. May their catchers not be able to catch. No, anyway, I'm sorry. Hey, Judah Smith does it all the time for the Seahawks, and we know they're not of God. But I'm sorry. You can't leave what you don't receive, and you can't leave what you don't release. I'll be real honest with you. There have been moments in my life I've been a spiritual hoarder. The word of the Lord's come to me, and I thought, oh, this is for me. And the truth is, it was for me, but you want to know something? He wants to bless. The reason He blesses us is so He can get it through us. See, He wants you to receive so you can release. He wants you to receive all that He has and release it. I remember, and I've shared this, I think this testimony, the Tuesday morning when Neville McDonald we're in revival with Neville McDonald in Chickasha, Oklahoma. It's a Tuesday morning, and it's in his second week, and I just made a decision. Lord, I've watched everybody else get theirs. Today's my day. And so I just remember pressing in and receiving from the Lord. And this is what's in my mind. When things are stirring in me, I just remember this. I just got to pray for people because I want more of this. And so I just got up and started praying for people because I'm like, hey, if I'll pour it out, he can pour it in. And so we can't leave what we don't release. In 2 Timothy, Paul writes to Timothy, 2 Timothy 1, he says, therefore I remind you to stir up the gift of God which is in you through the laying on of my hands. You can't leave what you won't release. When we start talking about multi-generational, I know that's difficult because these young whippersnappers, they just don't know how. You know something, there was one day that I was a young whippersnapper and I didn't know how. In fact, some of you might say he still doesn't know how. But anyway, that's another story altogether. But the point is the joke's on you. No, you can't leave what you don't release. That's what I'm saying. When you start getting older, you start thinking, well, how's this going to look when it ends? How's this look when it changes? What's the transition going to be? And you know something? I'm at least 20 years from giving this thing up. When I say giving this thing up, I'm pastoring for the next 20 years, and I'm probably going on my 70th birthday. I found this out on my 70th birthday. It happens to be Easter, and that may be the day that I resign. You just wait for it. But you can't leave what you don't release. Come on, church. Let's release people. Let's equip people to do. Listen, we're working in the building, and I, if you don't know this, there's several things about me, and one of those things is I am a perfectionist. The reason I'm a perfectionist because I'm the son of a perfectionist. And so sometimes when you release things to let people do, you're like, hey, and my dad's here, and I want to say this. I don't say this disrespectfully. In one bit, please understand my heart. What I'm trying to say is you got to release. There's 22,000 ways to skin a cat, and then Jim Russell's way. And listen, like I said, I am in no way. It's just that as I've gotten older, I've begun to recognize some of those pieces like, wow, I see why I am like I am. And I thank God for that sometimes. And then sometimes it's like, oh, my goodness. All right. But you can't leave what you don't release. Last statement, last thought. Is what you are spending your life on worth leaving? Now, listen, some of you go, well, I work 70 hours a week, and listen, I understand those pieces. I'm not saying, hey, well, this is stupid. I don't want to be doing this the rest of my life. Listen, hear me, hear my heart. Is what you are spending your life on, all the things that you're chasing, is it worth leaving? When it's all said and done, I'm going to tell you something right now. There are some things that I've chased in my life that aren't worth leaving. They just aren't. There's things that I struggle with right now that aren't worth leaving. What are you taking the time to leave? This was a story, a thought. It says, frankly, a lot of churches in the 1950s had to face this question. The people had just come out of the Great Depression and understood the value of having a lot of money. When the baby boom came, they were able to use that money to build bigger sanctuaries to accommodate all the children, and that was great to have the freedom to scale resources to meet need. But what happened to the children? I dare say that in some cases they built the buildings better than the children. Dramatic pause. Faced between a legacy of bricks and mortar or living souls, I dare say I know which one they called the living stone would have chosen. In 1980, Roger Maris reflected on his greatest achievement, but not so fondly. They acted like I had poisoned the record books, he said. Do you know what I have to show for 61 home runs? That's what Roger Maris hit 61 home runs in a season. He had set the record until Barry Bonds and all those guys broke it. With an asterisk. With an asterisk. He says, do you know what I have to show for 61 home runs? Nothing. Exactly nothing. How sad it to come so far and have so little. Know at the end of your race, when you have fought the good fight, when you have completed your task, my prayer for you, for me, is that we simply hear the words, well done, thou good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your master. Hey, let's not just build a building and leave debt and leave pain. Let's leave something of great value. What's left? What's left? If you're young, when I was this young, I was just trying to get to this old. Now that I'm this old, I wish I could go back to that young. Well, in some ways. Well, let me rephrase that. In a lot of ways. Don't go back. But the point is this, is right, we rush through hoping that at the end we can say, oh, look at my life, how wonderful it is. And I think this was a thought, at least from hearing parts of yesterday and hearing even Tiffany this morning, is we have to be intentional about what's left. Hey, listen, what's left? What do I leave? But what's left? How much time do we have left? There ought to be an urgency. In the house of God, there ought to be an urgency because not much time is left. Listen, when I was younger, I remember in church, I remember growing up and, oh, is God coming back today? Y'all remember that when they would guess dates? How many of you went home and made sure, right? I remember I called my mom. Well, there was one day that Jesus was supposed to come, and I was so unsure because I was so immature and unsure of myself, and I was probably under 12 years old. I remember going home from school and calling my mom because I figured if mom answered, all's good. If mom not there, I'm in trouble. I admit it. But, right? There's got to be an urgency. There's got to be an understanding. What's left? What am I leaving? But how much do I have left to accomplish this? Father, I would pray that today that you would take the simplicity of thoughts and even the silliness of presentation, and Lord, that you would touch hearts and impact lives and encourage people and challenge people today. Lord, we just thank you for your faithfulness to us. We thank you for your word. Lord, let us recognize that there is a legacy to leave. And Lord, that legacy is to honor you. First and foremost is to honor you. Not for our accolade, not for people to give us parades, but Lord, it's so that you would be exalted, that you would be magnified. And Lord, that a generation, the generations beyond us, behind us, Lord, would encounter your presence and know you. Father, I love you today. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your presence, and thank you for your word. In your precious name. Amen. Did you receive that today? You can't leave what you don't embrace. You can't leave what you don't receive. So allow the word to resonate in your hearts. Listen, go and read, continue reading with us in Acts. Man, it's powerful. I just love the little things that happen throughout the book of Acts. Continue to read with us. Jonathan, do you have that video ready? You do have it ready? Let's go ahead and play that video, and then when that's done, Sam's going to come and close us in prayer. Real quick, if you have any questions about this video, Val Silva, excuse me, I'm thinking of 100 things. Val Silva sitting over here. He's got a meeting this week about insurance and some of those stuff. Those are things that when you get older, you think about. When you're younger, you don't worry about it because mom and dad take care of it, hopefully. But you get older. And so if you have any questions or if you just go, what about this? See him, but on Tuesday, this Tuesday, the 17th at 10 a.m., we're going to be using this facilities for this meeting that she's about to tell you about.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. It's that time of year again when you're bombarded with all kinds of mail, emails, and even phone calls about your Medicare annual enrollment period. As a service to the community, the